All right, guys. So I've got Bitcoin up here, and I guess we're all past the point of just marveling at this. And now, we're really trying to figure out, where we are. Can we get a wave count on this? If you're not in it, where is the next opportunity or a place where you could perhaps get in with a reasonable probability? What are the expectations here? So let's go through it and see if we can be a little more nuanced about where the next opportunity is. So now here's the daily chart. This would be the easiest thing to just throw some numbers up. So if you were just learning Elliott wave, you might look at this and go, oh, okay, well here's a 1-2, and clearly this is the big wave. This is the impulsive three wave, and I'm certainly not calling a top here. That's been a foolish endeavor for people for 8,000 points. I mean, it would be a foolish thing to do. However, we can start making some projections about where we think we might see some pivots appearing, and we want to be nuanced about how we approach it, and if we can get a reasonable count on it, then we can be a little bit more strategic and tactile about how we approach the next opportunity to be buyers. So, this kind of a move, it immediately, my first thought is, well, that makes me a little uneasy because, I mean, it's so extreme. I mean, you have people this is, I guess you certainly could call this frothy buying. You've got people, maxing out their credit cards to buy Bitcoin, taking second mortgages, selling their jewelry. I mean, we are definitely in a mania here. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. The question is, can we find opportunities here? Can we trade it with a reasonable amount of risk reward? So, look, right. So, I mean, this very well could be the count that we're experiencing. I mean, here's our one wave. We get a 2. I'm starting at about $2 here. So, if you were looking at that and you were just being very rudimentary in your analysis, you could just say, all right, well, maybe we're topping out here. We went up to 9,700. A lot of people are expecting 10,000. That's a nice, juicy, round number, and the market likes those. But let's take a look here. So, if that were the count, well, then we'd be looking for a 4 wave somewhere down around 6,000. That would be your 38. You've got a fairly wide range here, right? So if you were trying to be considerate of where the probabilities are, we know a 4th wave between the 38 and the 50. So that's your high probability zone, but you've got about over $1,000 range there. So we want to be a little bit more precise in terms of where we're looking for entry. So first we need to qualify whether or not that could be a top. Could that be the 3rd high? Well, let's take this off. So I guess part of what I'm trying to say is that there's been a whole lot of trading, from here. What's this high here? From, you call it 1,100 to 9,700, and there's a lot of structure in here that we can use to our benefit with a little bit of fib knowledge and some of the Elliott wave rule set to help guide us in terms of where we are and where we potentially could be looking for a pivot. So, okay, so let's move this off here so I can let me take this off. Okay, so I've got a couple of things marked here. So first thing we got to do is, you can't ignore all this early trading. So I mean, it's somewhere in the larger context, it has meaning of where we are relative to the largest degree. So we can't just ignore it. So we got to try and count it and see if we can figure out where we are. So there it is. Let me take it. Let me take it to my primary, and I think this will be a little bit easier to see. So here we are here. So let's go off to the side. So I'm marking the key pivots here, and trying to keep it relatively simple. So I've gone all the way back to the very beginning. All right. So I'm taking the lowest if I pop this up, I'm taking the lowest low I can find here, which I think is about $2.60. That's the lowest low that I've got going all the way back, well, at least with regards to Bitstamp here. The lowest low I've got here is at about 264. Okay, so we certainly want to mark that. That's the lowest low we've got in terms of our chart history here. So, this, looking at that, right, so you can't just ignore that. I mean, that was something, right? So, potentially that's a one wave. Of course, I'm not going to go through the subdivision of this all the way back to 2014, but we had some sort of significant pivot there, and then we came down and we made a correction, right? So we see we get a big ABC, and we actually keep going. And so here's the next low that's meaningful here. So potentially, this is our two wave here. So I'm just going to mark that off. The significant swings. So this is our absolute bottom. This is potentially our one high. And we start working to the side. Now you've got to consider the context of where we were at that time. So a move, from 150 to almost 800, that was enormous. I mean, just percentage-wise, that was insane, and people were very excited about that. But if we're trying to get a handle on it, can we get a count here that makes sense? So from this too low, we can start to see we're getting some subdivision here that we can't ignore. So if that's a 1 back here, and this is a 2, well, we're looking to qualify our third. So minimum, we want to see 100% of the length of the one wave to give us a target for our third. So let's just measure that out and see if we can make that work. So here, I'm just working from my lowest pivot here, and I'm going up to my potential one wave high, and I'm going to my two wave low. A, B, C, right? We've got good subdivision down there. And you see over here, we get just beyond the 100%. So we know that if this were to be a 3, it qualifies per Elliott rule set as it would not be the shortest wave. So potentially what we have here is a third wave high. And we can see we had 1, 2, 3. We had great subdivision. Could have actually been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got a number of scenarios here. But the main thing I'm looking for, I'm not trying to go back and work through the subdivision here. Could this be the 3? And if that is the 3, how would this 4 play? So we know it's 100% of the length of wave 1. So let's measure for the 2. So if I'm taking it from my low to potentially my 3 high, well, I come to the 38.2 to the tick. Now, for a fourth wave, it's just textbook, right? So it couldn't be any more idealized right to the 38.2. There's the Vegas wave. I mean, it plays perfectly. So we have a potential fourth wave here per probability counts of what we'd be looking for in a fourth wave. Well, if that's my fourth, well, then I'm looking for my fifth. So, now, of course, we know what's coming here, and I'm just sort of dragging as we go here to set this up for kind of the work that you need to do to get a handle on where we may be in this count. So that plays, if here's my 4, well, here's a potential 5. So we're extreme. We've gone, here's the algo target. We're to and through all of it. So when that's the case, we can start to measure potential wave 1 relative to wave 5. So let's just out of curiosity. So let's go back to our absolute low. Get on it. There's my 1 projected from my 4. Well, we go right into that little window. There's the 1618. You see, we ticked just a little bit before it. Then we had one more final swing to complete. So likely you had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to complete the fifth up here. So that being the case, I've marked that pivot high. We have a completed 5-wave sequence. Right? So that's at 29. What are we at? 29.87 per Bitstamp. And then we get this big sell-off. So could that work? If that's a completed 5-wave structure, well, then we have potentially a 1-wave in place. So this is our first 1, 2, 3. We know that qualifies because it's longer than this wave. We had the perfect 4 at the 38.2, and we go up and we get that little window between the 1618 and 175, which is more commonly found as a target for a third wave. But at least we're technical here. So we hit that, and we can, per all Elliott rule set here, we've got a potentially completed 5-wave impulsive structure to give us a 1-wave. All right, well, if that's the case, let's consider the 2-wave. So looking at this, if that's a 1-wave, well, again, we get the 38.2, I mean, almost to the tick. It goes through by a couple of ticks. Now, that's shallow for a second wave, but we know it does happen. In strong bull markets like we're experiencing here, that can be the case. It's approximately 15% of the time through a statistical study that I've referenced many times, we potentially have a 2-wave here. And the fact that it's at the 382, gives me more comfort that potentially I've got a good 2-wave in place. So if that's my 2, then I can start measuring for my 3rd. Well, let's pull some of this off. Okay, if that's my 2, now of course we know what's coming. All right, so let me pull all of this off. It's amazing. Okay, so there we go. So let's look at that. Now here we sit. Now we've gone through how we got this as a potential 1-wave, right? Perfectly technical, all valid within Elliott rule set. So we've got a potential 1, 2. Well, if that's the case, then we're measuring for our 3rd wave, right? And this is just standard ops, how you would go about doing it. So I'm going back to my lowest low here. Remember, I marked that. That's my lowest low, so I can just pull from here. So if I get right on that, there I'm on it. There's my 1 high. Here's my 2 low. Take note. Now we are within a couple of ticks of the 2618, which would be the extreme for a 3rd wave. So that makes me pay attention to it, right? So I'm not, you can't call a top here. That's just been a fool's errand to try and call a top in Bitcoin. But I have a potential pivot here. Now, if it keeps going, I mean, it can, in a crazy bull market like this, it can certainly go through the 2618. Right here's the 300%. We'd have the 3618 up here. I mean, it certainly can keep going, but we have a potential for a technical pivot there. Right, and then we can start adding to that. So knowing that we're there, so we've got this little box right here. So we've got a potential target there. So let's open it up a little bit and see if there's anything else. Can we build a confluence there? Right now, I mean, look, the way Bitcoin's trading, it may blow through this pivot, while I'm recording this, but we can start to look for some other clues to give us some idea. So I can take this off, since we have that marked, and look for maybe some market geometry to give me some guidance here. So I can start looking here and go, okay, well, let's get a pitchfork on it, because I certainly have 3 good pivots. So I can go from my 1 wave to my 2 wave low. Well, that's kind of interesting. So I'm right there at that outside edge. And let me make sure I'm right on these. So you got to, when you change time frames, we got to tighten that up, make sure we're right on them. That's what happens when you change time frames. Okay, so we're right there. And no, so we've got potentially some confluence here, because we've got the market geometry. That's the 200% from the internal median lines. Here's our median line. Here's 100%, 200%. So we're coming up to potentially a likely target for a 3-wave high. So again, I'm not calling a top in Bitcoin. I'm just telling you we're at a spot where it wouldn't be surprising to see some sort of a pivot made there due to that confluence. Now we can also measure here. We can look within this context here. We can measure. Sorry, wrong one. We can take the length of this one, projected from the 4. We're at the 1272. Now, not to be discounted, that's the square root of 1618. So that's a potential secondary target for a 5th wave, right? So I'm measuring in blue here. I'm looking for the relationship between the 1 wave and the 5th wave. So very commonly, we'll top at the 100%, where we'll get symmetry there between the 1 and the 5. Next target, next most likely target, would be the square root of 1618, which is 1272. And interestingly, we're getting that overlap. So we start building this case for confluence. So if I go back again, and you'll recall that from my absolute low here to my 1 to my 2, so I look at the overlap I get here. So I've got 3 things telling me potentially I've got a pivot developing here for a potential third wave high of my entire bull move, of my entire impulsive structure. That's interesting confluence. The 2618 of the largest degree to a third wave, and the 1272 as a potential 5th for this 5-wave subdivision here. Now, listen, for all I know, tomorrow morning we come in and check the market and we're to and through 10,000. It certainly could happen. I'm just saying that's one to consider. And if we start to see some softness in the market starts to come back, well, then we could look back at this and say, well, there it was. All the technicals were there. Now, we certainly could keep going, because here's the 1618 of the 1 wave for a potential 5th. We've got additional targets up here. We know they're there. And we've also got, as I've shown you before, we know that the algos were using this swing here. This swing here on this 2 to this 3 high. There was the 50 to the tick, and now here's the negative 23. We're to and through it. Here's the negative 618. So potentially, you have a little extension here. That would be 10,000. That would be just 10,114. So we're in a window here where we have a pretty high degree of confluence here. That would be, we know this was the first target for algos was the negative 23. There's the negative 618. Here's the negative 100. Again, it certainly could keep going. But if we start to pivot there, the advantage of going through and doing that work is because now we know we potentially have the 3rd in and we're looking for the 4th. That's your next opportunity. So if I start pulling all of this off, get rid of all of it, and just go back to what we've outlined here. This is a potential target zone for that 3rd. Well, of course, now we're looking for the 4th. So if that turns out to be the swing high, and again, don't know that it is, but if it were, well, I got a couple of things I want to pay attention to. So here's my median line. If we were to come down, and again, this is hypothetical, but if we were to come down, that's a point of interest right there. That's the 23.6 in a very, very strong market. That's not unheard of. The highest probability is between 25 and 38. So we have strong probability for a 4th if we keep going. Now, we just want to continually pay attention to that median line, because we also have potentially down here that would be shocking if we got there that quickly, right? So more likely this starts to look like a place I want to pay attention. And then note here we also have this. If I open this up, we have this swing high here. So if I if I mark that right here. Look at that. That's kind of interesting to me as well. So next opportunity, potentially you have this pivot here offering some support, prior resistance, potentially offering support right at the 23.6, right at the median line. So that's what I'm watching for as a next opportunity to get long. I certainly, would not be surprised if we get over here. That certainly would play, and in the context of moving from the 200 to the 200, that would certainly be certainly a valid place. But look where that is. That's 6,700. Now, if we just go back to where we started, kind of the lazy man's. I don't know any different. So I'm just going to call this a 1-2. Well, if that's my 1-2, you'll recall I had it. So 1. There's my 2. There's my 3. I'm waiting for my 4. Well, if I'm not able or have the knowledge to know that potentially I'm at my 3 on a different degree, well, then I'm waiting for my retracement here. Yeah, hang on. Let's get this right. So I'd be going, okay, well, there's potentially my 2 here. If that were to be my 3, well, now I'm looking down here, 6,000, 7,400, and that may be the case. But I think again, you can't ignore these swings. They have meaning relative to where we are in the impulsive structure. So again, this may play. That may be the simplest. Many times that is what plays. But I think you can make a pretty strong case for this. And certainly, here's the one to be paying attention to right here, because we know the market has a very strong tendency to return to the median line. So if we can get that, and again, we could just keep rolling here. But if we were to get that, then look what that sets up. So just for the algo target, if we were to pop from here, then we've got, that's 11.6. And then we'd do the same kind of thing. We'd be looking for potential swing relationships to complete the largest degree. So we'd pull from the entire one, project it from wherever we get our 4 as a potential target for the 5th. So doing that extra bit of work, I think, is really worthwhile. And gives you better advantage in terms of where are the higher probability entry points, and where would you look, where would invalidation points be to tell you that you had the count wrong. All right, so good exercise to go through. I always encourage people to go through a primary and an alternate count, so you're not surprised by anything. And this is not an easy count. When it's moving like this, you really have to step back. I always suggest people take everything off your chart and just start wicking off major pivots, and then go through it slowly and qualify them. Could that be a 3? Remember what we went through, because the key to this was this as a 3rd and this as a 5th to create that count. That's what makes that work. But if you didn't know how to do that, well, then you're back with the sort of the pedestrian view of it, which is okay, well, they're 1, 2, 3. And I'm waiting for 6,000, or I'm waiting for a $4,000 correction. Now that may play, that may be what comes, but I think you can be a little bit more strategic and give yourself better probabilities for the next trade. Right? Not an easy one. Everybody wants to be in. Everybody now has just assumed 10,000 will be there. So, when you see it, when everybody's sure of it, that's the time to maybe be cautious and start doing some of the additional work to see if indeed it happens in this move, or we need to retrace a little bit before we head up to newer highs. All right, guys, I'll wrap it there.